That apparently did not happen. Joining us now to discuss this and more, Republican Mike Rounds, Senator of South Dakota. Senator, thank you so much for being with us. Let's start on the news this morning about those deportations, despite the order from the federal judge. Is the Trump administration ignoring a court order from a federal judge? What exactly is going on here?
Well, I found out about this at about the same time that you did this morning, so I don't have a good background to share with you. I can tell you that clearly these individuals should never have been in the United States to begin with. And the question is which laws are we using to get them back out and whether or not the courts agree. That part will be determined by the courts. But in the meantime, I'm happy to see that the president is following up with his promises that he's going to keep Americans safe. And that means getting these criminal drug or gang members, clearly criminal in nature, out of the United States. And there are thousands of them here. We'll use whatever the legal resources are to protect the American people. This is one of those cases. I'm not sure exactly where we're at with regard to the timing of it. As I say, I heard about it this morning about the same time that you did. So I don't have much more than that to say, except that I'm happy to see that they are doing everything they can to get them out of the United States. I think the vast majority of the American people are saying it's about time we get them out. We want a country that does not have these individuals walking around our streets. We want our families safe.
Sure, absolutely. We want our community safe. And as a philosophical matter, I don't dispute that I'm sure most Americans, if not all Americans, would support the idea that any violent people who are not in this country legally should not be in this country. But there obviously, you noted the word legal there, and it is just also a fact that U.S. District Judge James Boasberg ordered last night that, quote, any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States, unquote. If the Trump administration defied or ignored that order, is that a concern?
We'll find out whether or not that actually occurred or not. We don't know if that happened that way. I don't know about the timing on it. I do know that we will follow the law. We expect the executive branch to follow the law. We've said in the past that we will follow the law. That will remain consistent. We are a constitutional republic, and we will follow those laws. At the same time, just once again, I think the president is doing everything he can to honor his promise that he's going to keep our families safe. These illegal immigrants to begin with that are here, they are parts of a violent gang. And in this particular case, I believe the terminology that most of us would use would be TDA. And TDA is a recognized, what we believe to be a terrorist, not a terrorist, but a criminal drug organization. And if we can get them out of the United States, we're going to do it with whatever legal means there are that we have available to do that. So, number one, I think most Americans are going to say, I don't care how old the law is. If you can use it to get these guys out and keep my family safe, we're going to do it. In the meantime, along with that, there's a lot of other things going on in the world. And I think just the fact that the president is looking at a lot of these things and we're making progress in a lot of areas right now, that's a sign that we're very, very active and we are trying to do our best to keep our promises.
So let's talk about the escalating trade war with other countries, seemingly the rest of the world sometimes. Even as the president acknowledges there will be disruptions to the economy. The head of the Farmers Union in your state, South Dakota, said, quote, access to fair markets is essential to protecting family farms and ranches. American farmers and ranchers depend upon export markets. Extreme export tariffs will have extreme impacts on farmers and ranchers' ability to earn an income. Our way of life is in jeopardy, unquote. So he is expressing concern about the way of life of your constituents, farmers and ranchers, in the midst of and because of these tariffs that President Trump is imposing. How long are you willing to tolerate what the president calls disruptions to the way of life for your constituents?
Yeah, look, I've talked to a lot of farmers and ranchers here in the state. They still support the president. They're going to give him time to actually make a difference. But we know that most tariffs that the president has talked about have been a way to open negotiations on trade agreements. Jake, we have not had a new trade agreement on our ag products now in over 4 years. And our commodity prices show that. Most of the farmers and ranchers in our part of the country that have commodities to sell, they're not making a profit right now. They're breaking even or less. And so we do need to make some changes. I think the fact that the president is focused on tariffs right now will change as we bring people to the table. You know, our friends up north, and they are our friends in Canada, they are, as the president says, they are nasty negotiators, which is a compliment coming from him. He thinks they did a heck of a job in terms of taking advantage of the United States and the trade agreements that have been established so far. He wants to redo them, and this is the first shot over the bow. I think most of the folks that I talk to in my state, number one, they want good prices, and they know that the president cares about them. Matter of fact, he made that very clear in his communications to Congress a couple of weeks ago.
So quickly before we go, you're a member of both the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee. You heard Steve Witkoff on the show earlier discussing his meeting with Putin. President Trump and Witkoff sound optimistic that there can be a ceasefire reached. A few months ago, you said, quote, we may be deceiving ourselves by thinking, quote, there's a path towards a peaceful resolution to this by negotiating with a tyrant. Based on what you've heard so far from Witkoff and Trump, what do you think? Is President Trump deceiving himself?
Time will tell whether or not Putin is deceiving us. Look, this guy could have had peace to begin with. He's the guy that started the war. He is the aggressor. He is the guy that is not honoring Russia's agreement from 30 years ago, in which Ukrainians gave up their nuclear weapons in exchange for an agreement on sovereignty and the protection of their borders. Russia signed that agreement. They're the ones that have gone back on that agreement. They're the ones that invaded Ukraine. They could have had peace a long time ago if they wanted it. In this particular case, if Mr. Putin is changing his mind and he is recognizing the damage that it's doing to his economy, the damage that it's done to his military already, and he's now looking for a way out, as long as it is an enforceable peace, then I think we might be able to move forward. I question whether or not Mr. Putin is still serious about it, but whatever agreements we make, they have to be enforceable, or they will not work when we're dealing with Mr. Putin.
All right, Senator Mike Rounds, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jake.